If you've ever ignored a strange feeling, because it felt easier than asking questions, stay with me. This story only makes sense if you hear it all the way through. Now let me take you back. It was close to midnight. The house was finally quiet. Not peaceful. Just settled. Dishes done. Lights dimmed. The television murmuring in another room. I was half asleep in bed, drifting in and out, when I heard voices from the kitchen. At first, I didn't react. Families talk. Kids talk. You learn to tune it out. Then I heard my name. I stayed still. Didn't move. Didn't breathe too loudly. That house had old floors. They creaked if you shifted even an inch. My stepson spoke first. Low. Casual. Like he was talking about taking out the trash. I cut his brakes. My mind rejected the sentence before it understood it. Cut his brakes. There was a pause. Then my wife spoke. Not shocked. Not angry. Did you make sure it wouldn't be obvious? That's when sleep left my body completely. My heart slammed so hard. I was sure they could hear it from the kitchen. Every instinct screamed at me to sit up, to confront them, to demand answers. I didn't. I listened. He explained it the way someone explains a task. The tools. The timing. How it would look like an accident. My wife didn't argue. She didn't stop him. She asked questions. The wrong questions. Tomorrow morning. On the highway. You're sure? That's when the truth settled in. This wasn't anger. This wasn't impulse. This was planned. If stories like this matter to you, real moments, real warnings, real consequences, this is the right time to subscribe. These aren't entertainment. They're lessons people only understand after it's too late. Lying there in the dark, my life rearranged itself. Arguments I blamed on stress. Tension I ignored. The way my stepson avoided eye contact. The way my wife insisted I take my car instead of hers. It all made sense. Too late. When the kitchen finally went quiet, I didn't move. I waited until bedroom doors closed, until the house was still again. Then I sat up slowly, my hands shaking. I didn't go to the garage. I didn't check the car. I didn't confront anyone, because panic makes mistakes, and mistakes get people killed. I lay back down and stared into the dark until morning. One sentence repeating in my head. I cut his brakes. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I would act like I heard nothing. I would smile. I would follow routine. And I would remove myself from danger, without giving them a reason to stop me. Because when someone believes, you're still unaware. You're already one step ahead. What I did next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It didn't involve police lights or shouting, but saved my life. And once you hear how quietly everything unraveled after that, you'll understand why sometimes survival depends on staying silent. Just a little longer. Morning came like it always did. That was the strangest part. Sunlight through the curtains. The smell of coffee drifting down the hallway. My wife humming softly in the kitchen. As if nothing in the world had shifted overnight. I stayed in bed longer than usual. Listening. No whispers. No tension. No urgency. Just routine. That's when I understood something important. Whatever they had planned depended on me behaving exactly the way I always did. So I did. I got up, showered, dressed for work. I sat at the table while my wife slid a plate in front of me and asked if I'd slept well. Her voice was calm, normal, practiced. Fine, I said. Just tired. She smiled. My stepson didn't look up from his phone. I watched his hands instead. Steady, relaxed. No guilt, no nerves. People think danger announces itself. With anger or panic. It doesn't. It blends in. It pours you coffee. It asks about your day. Every instinct screamed at me. To grab my keys and throw them away. To say something. To demand answers. I didn't. Because the moment they knew I was aware, I lost my advantage. I picked up my car keys anyway. Running late, I said casually. Might have it serviced today. My wife nodded too quickly. Good idea, she said. You've been putting that off. That confirmed it. Outside, the car sat where it always did. Ordinary. Innocent. I didn't touch it. Didn't open the door. I walked past it. Like it didn't matter. I made the call from the end of the driveway. A towing company I'd used years ago. Reliable. Quiet. No questions. I need my car taken in, I said. Mechanical concern. Quietly. They arrived within 30 minutes. My wife watched from a window. Arms crossed. My stepson stepped onto the porch, trying to look curious, not alarmed. What happened? He asked. Just being careful, I said. You know me. The tow truck pulled away, my car strapped down like evidence, even if no one else knew it yet. As it disappeared down the street, something inside me loosened for the first time since the night before. Distance. That's what safety looks like at first. I didn't go to work. I called in sick. Then I drove straight to a small cafe across town. I needed time, and I needed it without eyes on me. I replayed the conversation again and again, this time without panic clouding it. They hadn't argued. They hadn't debated. They had coordinated. That meant two things. This wasn't meant to scare me. It was meant to end me. And if it failed, they would adjust. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I had words, not proof. And words can be twisted faster than truth. Instead, I made a list. Who knew my schedule? Who had access to my car? Who stood to benefit if I was gone? The answers weren't complicated. By the time I finished my coffee, I understood something else too. This wasn't about anger or resentment. It was about control. And control hates uncertainty. As long as they believed, I was still unaware, still predictable. I had time. Time to gather evidence. Time to move carefully. Time to survive. I paid the bill, left a tip, and stepped into the late morning sun. Behind me, my old life was still pretending everything was normal. Ahead of me was something far more dangerous, the truth, and the next step would decide whether I stayed ahead of it or became part of the plan they already believed had worked. By noon, my car was already on a lift. I stood in the corner of the garage, hands in my jacket pockets, watching Ray work in silence. I'd known him for more than 20 years. Not a friend in the casual sense. Something steadier. The kind of man who fixes things for a living and doesn't dramatize what he finds. I hadn't told him much on the phone, only that I needed him to look carefully, quietly. He didn't ask why. That alone told me I was in the right place. Ray slid out from under the car and wiped his hands on a rag. He didn't look at me right away. He looked back at the underside of the vehicle. Who else drives this? He asked. No one, I said. Just me. He nodded once and motioned me closer. The brake line wasn't snapped. It wasn't mangled. That would have been obvious. Instead, it was scored. Shaved just enough to weaken it. A few more miles. A little more pressure. One hard stop on the highway. That wasn't where, Ray said calmly. That was intentional. Hearing it out loud changed everything. Up until that moment, part of me still hoped. I'd misunderstood. That exhaustion had twisted what I overheard. There was no other explanation. Ray straightened up. Someone wanted it to fail at speed, he said. Not in traffic. Not in the driveway. On the open road. I leaned against the workbench. The room tilted slightly. Can you document it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Already started. Photos. Measurements. A written report. Time stamps. No emotion. Just facts. That mattered. Because facts don't bend. I told him enough then. Not everything. But enough for him to understand the stakes. You staying somewhere else? He asked. Yes. Good, he said. Don't go back alone. Before I left, Ray did one more thing. He drained the brake fluid completely. Tagged the line with bright tape. So no one can say it failed after the tow, he said. This locks the timeline. That's when I realized. I wasn't the only one thinking ahead. I drove away in a loaner car. The city felt sharper than before. Every stoplight felt like a test. Every reflection made me look twice. I didn't go home. I drove to a quiet public library on the edge of town. Somewhere I could sit, without being noticed. I opened a notebook and wrote. Exact words. Pauses. Tone. The questions my wife asked. The certainty in my stepson's voice. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I wrote what I would not do. I would not confront them. I would not hint that I knew. I would not try to scare them. Fear makes people unpredictable. And unpredictability gets people killed. What I needed was distance. Documentation. Time. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from my wife. Car get fixed? I stared at the screen before replying. Not yet. Staying late. Don't wait up. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No reply. That silence told me everything. They were waiting. Waiting for the plan. To finish itself. As I closed the notebook and stood to leave, one thought settled in clearly. They believed the danger. was still ahead of me. What they didn't know was that I'd already stepped around it, and the next move would force the truth into the open, whether they were ready or not. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in a small motel off the highway, the kind of place no one notices, and no one asks questions. I parked where the cameras cover the entrance, asked for a room near the office. Small precautions, but they mattered now. By morning, the story had already started moving, without me. The first call came from a neighbor I barely spoke to. "You okay?" she asked, her voice careful, curious. "We heard you didn't go to work." I told her I was fine, and hung up. Then another call came in, then another. Concern, wrapped in interest. By noon, my wife posted online. Nothing dramatic, nothing direct, just a message about stress, marriage problems, worrying behavior, a line about hoping I was getting the help I needed. No accusations, no details, just enough to plant an idea. By the time I saw it, the comments were already there. Support, sympathy, questions about whether she was safe. I understood the move immediately. If I spoke first, I'd sound defensive. If I waited too long, I'd look unstable. She was positioning herself as calm, reasonable, concerned, and me, unreliable. That's the danger of silence. If you leave it empty too long, someone else fills it for you. But I didn't rush, because lies rely on speed. Truth relies on sequence. I spent the afternoon organizing everything. Ray's report, photos, timestamps, my notes from the library, scanned, backed up, stored twice. Then I made one more call. A lawyer Ray recommended quietly. No billboards, no promises. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You did the right thing by staying quiet." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that. "She's building a narrative," she continued. "Let her. The more she adds, the more we can test it." That night, I went home briefly. Not to stay, just to observe. The house felt different, lighter, as if something had already been removed. My wife sat at the table, scrolling her phone. My stepson leaned against the counter. They looked up together. "There you are," my wife said. "Too warm." I was worried. "Long day," I said. She watched me carefully. "Did they find anything wrong with the car?" I shrugged. Hard to say. Her jaw tightened. Just for a moment. My stepson spoke next. "You probably imagined it," he said. "Cars do that sometimes." I almost smiled. They were already explaining a problem they didn't know I'd proven. I stayed only a few minutes. Long enough to keep the routine intact. Long enough to reinforce the lie. As I left, my wife touched my arm. "You should rest," she said. "You've been under a lot of pressure." Pressure. Her favorite word. It made everything sound accidental. Back at the motel, I lay awake thinking about how easily truth gets buried under concern. How quickly people accept a story, if it's delivered calmly enough. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because narratives can be challenged. Facts can't. And the next step wasn't about defending myself. It was about letting their version stretch far enough until it tore under its own weight. They thought they were getting ahead of the story. What they didn't realize was that every word they added was another thread in my hand, and soon I would pull the one that unraveled everything. The mistake they made wasn't cutting the brakes. It was assuming I would panic. I spent the next day doing something that felt almost unnatural after everything I'd heard and seen. I slowed down. I moved through the city, like someone with nowhere urgent to be. No sharp turns, no rushed decisions. Because when people think you're distracted or shaken, they reveal more than they intend to. By mid-morning, I had 3 things open on motel desk. Ray's mechanical report, a timeline I'd written by hand, and my phone, screen dark, notifications silenced. I started with the timeline. The night, I overheard them. The morning, my wife encouraged me to drive. The text asking if the car was fixed. The online post about my stress. Each event lined up, too neatly to be coincidence. Then I checked something I hadn't wanted to check. The hardware store. I drove there quietly and asked for a manager. Calm voice. No accusations. Just a question about receipts and cameras. I knew my stepson's habits. I knew where he went when he wanted tools fast and cheap. The manager pulled footage from 2 nights earlier. There he was. Same jacket. Same baseball cap. Buying a utility knife. and a small set of clamps. Paying cash. No rush. The timestamp matched Ray's estimate. Almost exactly. I asked for copies. He hesitated. Policy. But when I mentioned a safety investigation, his posture changed. People don't like being connected to harm, even indirectly. By afternoon, the footage was saved and backed up. Next came the phone records. I didn't hack anything. I didn't snoop illegally. I did something simpler. I remembered the family phone plan was still under my name. Online access gave me call logs. Not content. Just numbers. Times. Durations. One number appeared again and again. In my wife's history. Short calls. Late at night. Always before conversations. Where she pushed me to drive somewhere. Or stay late at work. The same number appeared once. Just once. In my stepson's log. 2 minutes. The night before the brake line was cut. I wrote the number down. And stopped there. I didn't call it. Not yet. By evening I had enough. To make the truth uncomfortable. But not enough. To make it undeniable. That's when the lawyer called. They're getting restless, she said. Your wife contacted a mediator. She's framing this as concern. For your mental health. I laughed once. A short, humorless sound. Good, I said. Good, she repeated. Yes, I said. It means they think they're ahead. Silence on the line. Do you have more? She asked. I will, I said. But not today. That night, I did something deliberate. I went home. I walked in calmly. Like a man returning from a long day. I asked about dinner. Commented on the weather. I stayed just long enough to let them relax into their certainty. My stepson talked too much. My wife watched too closely. I excused myself early. As I reached the door, my stepson asked, "Car running yet?" I turned and smiled. Soon. The look that crossed his face wasn't relief. It was calculation. Back at the motel, I laid everything out again and added one final note to the timeline. They believe the danger is still coming, which means they're still exposed because the truth doesn't need to rush. It only needs to arrive intact, and the next step would do exactly that by putting their own words, their own actions, and their own confidence side by side. Once that happened, no explanation would save them. Not concern, not confusion, not family, and I would make sure the truth spoke clearly, without raising my voice. Even once, the meeting ended without shouting. That's what people expect. Raise voices, slam doors, something dramatic enough to mark the moment. There was none of that. Just silence. The kind that follows when everyone in the room understands the truth has shifted, and no one knows what to say next. I walked out first. Not fast. Not slow. Measured. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Clearer. Like a storm had finally stopped circling overhead and chosen a direction. I sat in my car for a long moment without turning the key. Hands resting on the wheel. Breathing. Because even then, I knew something important. What had just happened wasn't the end. It was the point of no return. They no longer believed they controlled the story. They no longer believed I was confused, emotional, or unstable. Calm had done what panic never could. It had stripped away their leverage. But exposure isn't the same as consequence. Documentation isn't the same as accountability. Truth, even undeniable truth, still has to move through systems built to resist it. And once it starts moving, it doesn't do so gently. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A call this time. My lawyer. We're ready, she said. But once this starts, it doesn't slow down. I looked at the road ahead. At how ordinary it looked. Traffic lights. People walking dogs. Someone waiting at a bus stop. Life continuing as if nothing was about to break apart. I know, I said. Let's do it. After that call, I didn't go home. I didn't want familiar walls influencing how this felt. Instead, I drove aimlessly for a while. Past places that had once felt safe. The grocery store where we used to shop. The park where my stepson learned to ride a bike. The stretch of highway where my brakes were supposed to fail. I realized something then. The danger hadn't just been physical. It had been psychological. They weren't only trying to end my life. They were trying to erase my voice. To make sure that if anything went wrong, no one would believe me. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the tools. Not the planning. The confidence. The belief that silence, concern, and careful wording would be enough to bury the truth. By evening, messages had started coming in. Carefully worded ones. From my wife. Are you okay? I'm worried. We should talk. I didn't respond. Because now, every word mattered. And the wrong reply, even a calm one, could become part of someone else's version of events. I checked into the motel again that night. Same room. Same view of the parking lot. I laid everything out on the bed. The mechanic's report. The security footage stills. The phone records. The timeline. All of it told the same story. Not loudly. Clearly. I thought about Evan. About the way he'd spoken that night. Casual, confident, certain. About how easily children learn what adults model. About how close I'd come to never hearing another warning again. That thought tightened something in my chest. I didn't sleep much. Not from fear. From awareness. Because once you see the shape of a lie clearly enough, you can't unsee it. Sometime after midnight, another message came in. This one shorter. We don't have to do this the hard way. I stared at the screen. There it was. Not concern. Not confusion. Pressure. They still believed they could manage the outcome. If they just adjusted their approach. I turned the phone face down. They were wrong. Because the next step wouldn't happen in quiet offices or mediated rooms. It wouldn't depend on tone or patience or choosing the right words. It would be formal, recorded, permanent. And once that door opened, there would be no walking back into the life they thought they were protecting. Because the final step wasn't about proving the truth anymore. It was about letting the truth do what it always does. When it's finally given room. Expose everything around it. And in the next part, there would be no conversations left to manage. No narratives left to shape. No silence left to hide behind. Only consequences. Arriving one by one. The ending wasn't loud. No handcuffs in the driveway. No shouting across rooms. No moment dramatic enough to match the danger I'd escaped. It ended the way most real things do. On paper. Within weeks, everything moved through proper channels. Statements were taken. The mechanic's report became official. Store footage was logged. Call records were reviewed. The mediator's notes were subpoenaed. I wasn't present for most of it. That was intentional. Distance isn't avoidance when it's chosen carefully. It's protection. I moved into a small furnished place across town. Neutral. Quiet. Temporary. I told only a handful of people where I was staying. I slept better than I had in months. Not because the fear was gone, but because it was no longer ignored. The house I'd shared with them stayed silent. My wife tried once to reach out directly. A message framed as concern, regret, confusion. I didn't respond. Because when someone plans harm calmly, they don't deserve emotional access afterward. My stepson said nothing. Not a word. His silence told me more than any denial could have. The legal consequences arrived slowly. Exactly the way truth prefers to travel. No dramatic reversal. Just pressure. Questions. Cross-checks. Timelines that refused to bend. Eventually, explanations stopped working. I won't share every detail of what followed. Some things don't need public versions. What matters is this. The attempt failed. The truth held. And control shifted back where it belonged. Not through confrontation. Not through rage. But through patience. I sold the car. Not because it frightened me, but because I didn't need reminders. I bought another one months later. I drove it carefully at first. Then normally. Then without thinking about it at all. That's how healing happens. Quietly. People often ask why I didn't confront them that night. Why I didn't storm into the kitchen. Or call the police immediately. The answer is simple. I was never trying to win an argument. I was trying to stay alive. And survival doesn't announce itself. It listens. It observes. It moves when the moment is right. I learned something important through all of this. Danger doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks familiar. Sometimes it pours coffee and asks about your day. Sometimes it waits for routine to do the work for it. The most important decision I made wasn't towing the car or gathering proof. It was believing what I heard, even when it shattered the life I thought I knew. Walking away didn't make me weaker. It made me free. If you're watching this and something in your life feels quietly wrong, if a sentence you overheard won't leave your mind, if your instincts are asking you to pause instead of push forward, listen to them. Staying calm doesn't mean staying passive. Sometimes it's the strongest move you have. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. These stories aren't about fear. They're about awareness, patience, and the choices that protect us when no one else will. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from. It means more than you think.